Oh, we already have a comment. Banger intro as always. Yay. Hey everyone. Uh, like I think we're live. GM to 26 intern on the yeah. Hey everyone. Welcome to today ecosystem hour on Amplify to the live. I'm Dai, and I'll be hosting this session as we dive into I think a super exciting topic: atomic, modular, and unified liquidity. So whether you are deep into DeFi or just here to learn, you're probably in the right place. So I'm joined by two awesome guest speaker today. And first we have George, founder of Euclid Protocol. And hey, George.
Hey, everyone.
Yeah. And we have Simon, founder of Amplify.
What's up? What's up?
Cool. Yeah. So for here for the vibe today, we're going to start by learning more about Euclid protocol, what it is, what is matter, and what exciting things are happening right now. Yeah. Cool. Sure. Maybe we can kick this off.
Sure.
Or
Yeah, guys. First of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I've met Simon multiple times, and last in Bangkok, and we've been talking on Telegram for a while as well. And very quick intro about Euclid. What we're doing is we're building a unified liquidity layer that allows basically to unify liquidity that exists across the entire ecosystem. Whether you're thinking about EVM L2s, EVM sidechains, Cosmos, Solana rollups, everything that's coming, we're aiming to unify liquidity across them, because right now the more chains that are coming up, the more fragmentation of liquidity is going to exist, which means applications cannot offer good user experience because they cannot cater except to a limited liquidity and limited users. And two, users are facing, I would say, bad user experience, high prices, high slippage due to basically bridging, and which is caused by fragmentation of liquidity. So we're building infrastructure that allows for chains and applications to natively unify liquidity and access liquidity outside of their ecosystem without actually having to bridge assets, build on other ecosystems, or any other semi-alternative that might exist, which can cause basically bad user experience, bad prices, and limited compatibility. That's a very quick intro about what we do.
Nice. Just quickly, how so we talk about unified liquidity, right? And I think a lot of the last the recent talks in the space has been about the fractionalization of liquidity. People have suggested many different options or iterations on how to do that. People talk about chain abstraction, which is a bit different than just that, but there's a few different components. So how does Euclid work, and how do you unify liquidity? I guess, what is your solution to unifying liquidity, and how does it differ from what the market, or what maybe others are doing in the market, or what the current solutions are out there?
Yeah. So basically,
sorry for interrupting. Before we start, just a quick reminder that we are doing a $300 giveaway during this AMA. So one lucky attendee will be picked at random. So yeah, you maybe asking a great question might improve your chance. And yeah, and if you're not picked, we also pick the best recap after the AMA. So yeah, keep the notes handy. Okay, back to you, George.
Yeah. So basically, So unified liquidity is a very broad term, which is used in many different contexts. So when you talk about abstraction, people say unified liquidity, which is basically unification on the front end or making it simpler for the user, but you're not actually unifying liquidity, right? Liquidity is fragmented. You're just simplifying access to it. When you talk about intents, it's the same thing. When you talk about all the other solutions, it's kind of solving part of the problem, which may be either for the users or for the applications, but it's not rebuilding, from the ground up, which is one of the, I think, major what everyone is lacking when building on unified liquidity. But the good thing is everybody is now talking about the problem, which is fragmented liquidity, which 1 year ago nobody was talking about. But now, this year alone, so 2025, you have maybe 30 expected layer 2 or sidechain or chain launches, if not more, right? You have all these hyped up launches, and all these launches need liquidity. Whether any layer 2 or layer 1 you're thinking about, which is launching, needs liquidity, other than the ones that already exist, right? And the question is, abstraction won't solve this, intents won't solve this, bridges won't solve this, because you have now 30 that need millions of liquidity to be able to scale. And for them to get this liquidity, what they're offering is what we call incentives or bribing, or whatever you want to call it, which is very, very expensive. Like they're paying out of their tokens or even fiat millions of dollars a year each to be able to attract this liquidity for a short period of time, to be able to get these users, and then liquidity just moves to the highest incentivized chain, right? So what we're doing is trying to break off this cycle of incentivizing and then moving away. Sorry if there's a bit of noise next to me, by the way. And what we're doing is we're building actual infrastructure from the ground up, which is able to scale liquidity for all chains involved. So instead of these chains fighting for the same liquidity, we're building infrastructure which allows first a chain to keep its own TVL, right? We're not taking TVL away from a chain, but at the same time sharing this TVL with others to be able to create one unified, if you want TVL, one unified liquidity that anybody can access at any time. So it doesn't matter if you have liquidity or I have liquidity or this chain has liquidity. We can all share it, right? Or share access to it to users and applications to be able to benefit from it. First, our liquidity providers make fees out of it, so everybody wins. Nobody is actually losing. And users who like my chain will still come to my chain. So users who like Solana will still keep on using Solana, and vice versa. But everybody wins is you pay way less in incentives. People are more incentivized to stay on your chain. For applications, and this is what I believe in, all applications from Eclipsify to any application you can think of deserves to be omni-chain. And I think everybody's end goal is to be omni-chain. Nobody wants to cater to one layer 1 only, because you're limiting your user base and your liquidity, like it's so narrow, while there's a whole ecosystem coming in and growing, right? Everybody wants to cater to Solana. Everybody wants to cater to EVM. So we want to offer infrastructure that applications can integrate natively to become omni-chain instantly, basically. Not like instantly, but like in very easily, I would say, right? So this is what Euclid is. It's infrastructure from the ground up that allows you to build unified liquidity for the first time ever, basically.
That's cool. So walk me through maybe how that works. So you mentioned obviously not using intents or bridges, all this sort of stuff. Maybe in like a simple way, in a simple manner. If you could walk through like exactly how does that look from a technological perspective, like maybe without like too much complexity, if that's even possible. But how do you share liquidity or unify liquidity through Euclid to go, hey, we've got to pull on Solana, I've got to pull on Osmosis, and you want to unify the liquidity so you're trading as if you have like multiple venues of liquidity. How do you achieve that, without intents or bridging, all this sort of stuff? Like what is your solution for combining that liquidity or making it unified and more efficient?
Yeah, so I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible because it's a bit technical. We can go all day, and anybody who's interested can go to our documentation and read like in more details. But very simply, there's two parts of the infrastructure that we build. First is the communication layer, which we leverage, IBC, ZK IBC, to be able to, for chains to communicate. This is the first most important part. So imagine I have liquidity and you have liquidity, right? We're two chains. And then we can communicate with each other how much liquidity we have, right? But the issue is, if we do that across 50 chains, nowadays I need to talk to too many people at the same time. So what we need to be able to do that is one, let's say, central layer or central communication center, if you want to call it, which everybody can relay their information to. So I relay my information. I have $100 in liquidity. You do the same. I say you have $200. And the router or the central command center, if you want to call it, knows that there's 300 in total liquidity. And then when a user wants to request a transaction or request a swap, instead of going to one chain and asking it, hey, how much liquidity can I get from you, right? Or from the total, I'll say, I don't know. But if you ask the command center, it knows exactly where the liquidity exists, how much exists, and how it can route it for you, right? So everybody talks to this command center, and the command center basically is able to route this liquidity for you and allow you to do a cross-chain transaction without actually having to bridge any asset from where you are, and without actually having to do any intent, any centralized aspect. All of this infrastructure is built decentralized from the ground up. Of course, there's many more small technical components to it, but this is very briefly how it works. And then through the communication layer, you're able to actually do whatever you want from any chain and receive any asset on any other chain just by communicating with each other without actually having to move any assets from one place to another.
So you're almost like a split aggregator or router, kind of, right? It's kind of like you're going, well, in a slightly different way, but someone's performing a swap, and then that swap is being you do it using ICQs and things to like communicate with these chains. But I'm putting a swap in, and then I'm basically, it's being split across these different pools, which are acting like one unified liquidity pool. Is that right? So like with an aggregator, yeah, sorry.
No, I'm just saying this is one part of it, but the main aspect that powers it is what we call unified pools. So what you can do with this is what we call a unified pool, which is basically a pool that doesn't exist on one chain, but actually exists on all chains at the same time. Right? So
It's
I
like
can create
a virtual pool, right? So
yeah, exactly. That's what we call it. It's a virtual pool.
Okay, virtual pool. Is that similar to? I mean, yeah, this is different, more complex, but okay. Yeah. So it's a virtual pool that aggregates all the different pools that acts as like a unified pool of all the liquidity across all the different markets. If that's correct, just breaking it down.
You can also directly add liquidity to this pool, so it acts like a normal pool, right? But doesn't hold the liquidity; it just knows where the liquidity exists for this pool. So I can create, let's say, a USDC USDT pool, a unified pool, and the USDC can be provided from Solana, but the USDT can be provided from Neutron, right? It doesn't matter where the liquidity is added from, because for it abstracts the concept of liquidity from the concept of the execution layer, very briefly, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. So having that virtual liquidity that sort of acts, that makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, this is deep questions. I'll probably dive into more the simple questions. But so do you run into any like challenges of doing this sometimes, like delays or challenges with like front running or bots because of, the fact you're dealing with, even with IBC, the fact it is still some time of bridge, right? You're still kind of dealing with assets on multiple chains. So doing swaps in multiple places, do you have a time where you might, let's say you aggregate like a swap of a meme coin across 3 chains, and you get like a sandwich attack on a sandwich like trade on Solana that affects the whole kind of dynamics because things are constantly changing in real time. Like, how do you deal with the delays or the one challenge that, there is some, it's not as straightforward as acting like an execution on a singular chain, right?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And basically how we deal with it is that the command setter we're talking about, the settlement layer, which we call it, any transaction that happens across the chains, any chain that you talked about, should be confirmed in the settlement layer, right? And settlement layer is basically a layer 1. So there can't be 2 transactions being confirmed at the same time. One needs to be confirmed before the other. So you can't execute where if you execute the transaction on Solana and somebody executes a transaction on Ethereum, both need to be confirmed on the settlement layer for it to be final on unified liquidity and for you to be able to receive your assets. So at the end of the day, somebody is able to, for you to execute on a price, it needs to be confirmed on the block. So there's no way that double spending could happen or something else could happen on another chain which could affect your pricing or your assets. And this is what we call unified liquidity, because it's not aggregating different prices, it's one price for all chains, right?
So how do you like factor in slippage or things like that? If you're quoting at a specific time and by the time the trade is executed there's a delay, how are we factoring slippage in for different discrepancies?
Yeah, so think of how any DEX does that, right? So basically what you do is you add the minimum out, right? The minimum tokens I will accept to receive. If I don't receive that, my transaction fails and I get back my assets. Right. So it's all about having how much basically slippage will I accept, Highly volatile pools, you need to add more slippage. Stable pools, you need to add less slippage. So it's similar to how anything works, basically.
So could you get a partial failure? So let's say I'm splitting, the trade's getting split across Ethereum, Base, Solana, and I don't get slipped on Ethereum or Base, but I get slipped on Solana outside of the range. Will that just trade more on Ethereum and Base, or will it just partially fill the position and say, okay, part of it has failed because of the Solana. I got slipped out
Yeah.
last rank Solana.
Yeah. So again, good question. But one misconception is that we don't act, if you're splitting or routing through a pool on Solana, Base, Ethereum, you're not actually going to these chains. The settlement layer, because it knows how much liquidity exists, does it for you virtually while accessing them. So this is, you know what I mean? So you're not actually going there. So there's not this delay where you're hopping through chains. Now that would be bridging, right? We don't do that. You just send a message to the settlement layer. It settles for you the complete transaction, which happens, right? You can go through Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, and back to USDC, right? Without actually having to go to any of these chains if you're executing from Neutron, right? So the slippage is only calculated based on the pricing of the pools, unified pools that exist, right? Now, partial failure could happen if you wanted to. Now, usually by default, they don't happen. So if one part fails, you reverse the whole transaction. And because it's confirmed on the virtual settlement layer on one layer one, you can reverse easily the whole transaction. It's not like you already executed, right? You can reverse the whole transaction, but some people would prefer, for some use cases, would prefer to keep, half of the transaction with them. Could be possible, and you could do that as well. But by default for users, it's reversing the whole transaction.
That's what I was trying to get to. It's like if that failed from that, because you still need to bridge that gap, right? The assets still need to go into buying the asset, so you don't want to end up with gaps between the virtual pool and the Solana. If I'm understanding that correctly, right?
Yeah, exactly. But because you reverse it, now everything goes back as if it didn't happen.
But it could set it up so it has partial failure to be like, okay, I'm getting sandwiched on the Solana side of things.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, I know we dug into technical stuff, which might be above some people, but the idea is just like how this works when we've got when we deal with cross-chain transactions and delays and things like that. But I'm guessing it executes pretty quickly because you're using a virtual pool, or does it still take time?
No, it's pretty fast. Executing the transaction is pretty fast. Now the cool thing is when you send messages cross-chain, sending messages is also very, very fast, right? You're not sending, because messages are very cheap and easy to transfer between chains. So this is very fast, and executing the virtual pool on the virtual pool is very fast. The only latency would be what chain you are using, right? Because at the end of the day, we're limited to the block time of the chain that you're using. So if you're using Ethereum, it's not going to be as fast as if you're using Solana, Say, or any of these networks, right?
And where does the asset end up? Does the asset end up on the chain that I'm purchasing from? So, like,
it's your decision. It's your decision. So you can decide depending on where the other asset exists. So let's say I'm swapping to USDC. Anywhere where the USDC exists, I can get it. But if I want to withdraw USDC to a chain where it doesn't exist natively, then you can't do that because we don't handle the bridging. You would have to bridge it yourself later.
Okay, that makes sense. So, like, if I was buying a meme coin of Solana from Neutron, I couldn't necessarily do that because unless it's got a pool and iteration on that chain.
You would get the Solana on Solana. You would have to handle that, right?
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, I was just trying to understand. You could buy something on Solana that's on this chain, and then you could have bridging happening in the background that bridges it to the chain. But I guess you're not dealing with bridging, so it's not.
I personally don't like it. You could do it. Like, everybody can do whatever they want, but bridging, if you have to do it, you could do it. But the goal is to minimize bridging as much as possible. There's an image I put on the tweet. I showed it to you, Dai. If you can share the screen a bit, it simplifies also. We can, because we're talking about it now. It simplifies how the process looks like and how basically simple it is, but also
Sure thing.
Yeah, I guess I was just trying to understand, like, because that is also an interesting concept, right, around cross-chain trade, like cross-chain swapping or trading, and like where assets are held, especially when we deal with this future of chain abstraction, right? We deal with assets not really knowing, we're not needing to deal with a cross-chain world, even though we are it's cross-chain. They don't need to deal with the UX of a cross-chain world and how that. But I guess this is slightly different. You're sort of more just dealing with chains that have pools on each chain, as opposed to like just general swapping from anywhere.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, if you can access liquidity that exists on other chains, why do you have to bridge it over then? As an application, you just have to become omni-chain in a way where you can handle assets anywhere, right?
Yeah, so then the viewing of the asset has to be dealt with of multiple chains of like, hey, you're holding this on Solana, but you see it under the same wallet, right? Which is the one wallet able to hold multiple representations of the token. That's definitely like I think the end goal. And I think if I think about Polaris has sort of thought through this in that way, I think it's a slightly different interpretation of it. But I've always thought about this even for Eclipse, like how do we create a multi-chain app that sort of abstracts that complexity of UX in terms of like USDC on Solana, USDC on Ethereum shouldn't look different. And I mean, you need to give people the option of that because there can be different discrepancies of like liquidity and all this sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, like an asset should be an asset. We shouldn't be interacting with a cross-chain, like a fractured of like, oh yeah, there's 10 different versions of USDC on 10 different chains. It should be holding USDC. But it's still hard to do because there's still discrepancies in terms of like liquidity and things like that.
Exactly. But the goal is with unified liquidity, there's no more discrepancy. It's one liquidity for the same asset on all chains. And that's the goal. The goal is to have one price for all chains, make it back to one asset. Because now you cannot say by any means that this asset on Ethereum and this asset on Osmosis is the same asset. Even if they're bridged, minted, froze, whatever, it's never the same asset. They hold different security assumptions because of the layer. They hold different liquidity assumptions, different price. So then they're not the same asset by any means. The goal is to
that's the problem, right? Okay, I think about this with like USDC on Terra and you know, when the hack stuff happened and you're like, okay, well, you got USDC on this side worth $20 and USDC side worth $1 because there's been a hack and there's been like bridge issues. And that's one thing that I think is still challenging with this notion of the whole notion of cross-chain, you know, unification or cross-chain abstraction with like one asset being, you know, the same asset across these chains. That's the ideal scenario that we want, right? Is these assets being so close to each other that you can basket them into a singular asset as opposed to like different representations. But you're right, like the security assumptions is challenged. But I think at one point we will need some trade-offs between those security assumptions and UX, because just the nature of like, if you go to use the SEX, they take on those different assumptions and those different baskets. Like we have a clip on Gate, we have a Neutron clip, and we got Arbitrum clip. Those are different assets. They might even have different prices, right? But we have the SEX actually handles the UX of that, where the user's just interacting with the clips. But the SEX is, we have to, for example, because of there's no MetaMask swap for Gate, we actually have to top up the account on Gate between ARB and Neutron Euclid if the amounts of discrepancies. Like at the moment, there was no ARB Euclid in Gate, but there was Neutron Euclid, and so they deal with all this stuff in the background. But for the user, they just see Euclid. They don't see the difference between the two, and I think that's like the end goal. But
exactly, and the end goal is exactly that. And I don't think you need to have a trade-off. Now you need to have a trade-off, right? Now there's a trade-off between security and user experience, right? But then I think right now how we're dealing with it is like how Henry Ford used to say, is that we need to make the horse how users want to make the horse faster, right? If I ask my users what they want, is to make the horse faster, right? So what I give them is a car. So there's a better solution, but you need to forget all the assumptions that you had before and build from the ground up something new, right? So we're moving on how to make bridging better. How can we enhance bridging? How can we improve or abstract its issues? How about we don't do bridging and do something else? So this is what we're trying to do, right? And this may be a solution with less trade-offs. I won't say there's no trade-offs, but definitely less trade-offs in terms of security, centralization, and user experience.
Cool. So walk us through this. Obviously, we've got a screenshot that Di's just pulled up from the Twitter. So maybe walk us through what we're seeing here. I can see Trump, ETH. Yeah.
So basically, just because we put Trump, just because, you know, Trump has been hyped for the past weekend, and a lot of people trying to sell it over and then bridge it, and then
just real quick, George. People on Twitter won't be able to see this, but it is live streamed on the YouTube. So if they want to come back over, this will be recorded on the YouTube channel where you will be able to see our screens. But the people listening in on Twitter won't be able to see this screenshot. So just keeping that in mind.
Okay, so this is on my Twitter. I don't know if you can link it there, but this is on my Twitter. There's an image where there's Trump and ETH, like a small UI of what we're offering. But basically what you're saying here is you're saying I'm being able to sell Trump directly to ETH, right? So Trump is on Solana, as you know, directly to ETH without actually having to care about how it goes through, not bridging it through any of the bridges. Because personally, I wanted to buy Trump during the weekend. I wasn't able to because I didn't have Solana in any of my hot wallets, and I couldn't get any bridge to work to get Solana because it was just hectic, right? I was like, what bridge should I use? And then I had no answer, and nobody I asked knew. Then I, tried to use a centralized exchange like Binance to put in, USDC, swap it to Sol, and get Sol. Sol was, you couldn't withdraw Sol from centralized exchanges as well. So I couldn't do it basically, right? But if you think about Euclid, what you can do is, so here we're selling Trump, but you can directly sell or buy Trump from ETH. So from your ETH MetaMask wallet, you could buy Trump directly in less than 15 seconds using basically unified liquidity. So if you look at on the right, what you'll be able to see is here we're selling Trump. So you could basically, on Radium, it would automatically sell Trump to USDC here. Then one thing we're also working on, and we didn't talk about, is also unifying liquidity, not only that exists on decentralized exchanges, but also centralized exchanges. So we're offering the orders that exist on centralized exchanges as virtual pools on decentralized exchanges. And now, as you can see here, the USDC is now swapped to Bitcoin right on Gate, directly from Euclid. You don't have to do anything. It just shows it to you so you can understand. And then through unified liquidity, we swap this Bitcoin to BNB, for example. And then through Uniswap, this BNB is swapped to ETH, right? All of this is done directly through Euclid and can be done directly in one transaction by signing it from any wallet that you have that holds Trump, for example. And if you look at the withdrawals up on the right, you'll be able to see you can withdraw directly to your Binance account and to your Ledger because you have address management, and you can split the ETH that you get across the two. So I want to put some ETH in my Binance and some ETH in my Ledger. And all of this in one transaction, which takes, I would say, because it's on Ethereum, 30, 40 seconds, you do all this. This would have taken me 20 minutes if I want to do it myself. So this is just a bit of a vision of how unified liquidity can improve user experience, plus also make it so much better for applications to offer services, assets, or their product to omni-chain users.
That makes sense. It's really cool. I'm still one piece I'm still trying to work out though, is that there would be somewhat of a bridging element still, right? Because if you're transacting on Euclid, you're still having the swap is still happening at some point on Solana, right? So the asset has to be over there to perform that swap. So how is that getting there to perform the transaction? Is that still bridging to the chain to be able to perform
it already exists there?
Right.
So the Trump, for example, already exists on Solana. It's swapped to USDC, which stays on Solana. Now this USDC is swapped to
Trump.
Bitcoin.
Whose Trump is being swapped? Because the asset doesn't hold the Trump on the Solana that needs to get there to swap.
The user.
Right?
The user has the Trump, right? So I have Trump in my wallet. I want to swap it.
Yeah, but where are you holding the Trump?
In my wallet.
But on which wallet?
Like my Solana wallet, my Phantom.
Right. So if it's performing a part of the swap on Solana and a part on Ethereum, does the Trump then have to be bridged to Ethereum to be swapped?
No, because the Trump is swapped to USDC on Radium, so on Solana. So you didn't move away from Solana yet.
Right. But if there's multiple pools of Trump, let's say there's Trump across 3 pools, there's omni-chain, and you want that pool to act as one chain across one pool across 3 chains, how is that then interacting, and how is that asset then moving? So if let's say I'm doing a swap and then and there's 3 pools, 3 liquidity pools for Trump, right? And all of those are being and let's say I'm on Base and I want to sell my Trump from Base, and there's a pool on Base, there's a pool on Solana, and there's a pool on Ethereum. My Trump is being held on Base. That Trump still needs to end up on Solana to be swapped. So how is that Trump getting to Solana to be swapped if there's that congestion on the network or something like that?
Yeah, okay. So let's say we're doing the opposite. We're doing ETH to Trump. I want to buy Trump with my ETH, right? That would be easier. Now, what would happen is the opposite. So my ETH will be swapped to, let's say, USDC, right? Now, because we have unified liquidity, this USDC here, right, can be swapped to USDT or Sol that exists on Solana. This is what unified liquidity does. So I deposit into a contract my USDC, and I get Solana from the Sol contract on Sol. And this Solana is swapped to Trump on Radian, and you get Trump.
So that's
So
the
this
bridge. That's a bridging part, right? So the asset's still being bridged over.
we call it bridge because there's no other term. It's not bridging because we're not moving an asset to another place. This asset, Solana, already existed on Solana, and USDC still exists on Ethereum. Nothing has been moved.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's the I'm just trying to piece these components together of how it works because it sounds new. Okay.
It is. It's because it's nothing we had to do with what we are used to. It's a bit confusing, and I get that. But basically, you can think of it as we don't move. Even bridging is not moving assets. When you think of bridging, you're not moving an asset. You're just burning it or freezing it somewhere, and you're minting a copy of it somewhere else. This is what I don't want to do. What I want to do is this stays here, but communicates that it exists to somewhere else, so that it can calculate how much to receive of another asset somewhere else, if that makes sense.
But that would require those other pools to be plugged into Euclid for this to work, right?
Exactly. So there's unified pools which are plugged into Euclid, and you have outside pools which are Radium pools, Uniswap pools, Osmosis pools.
Yeah. No, that makes sense because it's like different, right? When you're dealing with something completely outside versus something that's plugged in. Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because that changes the dynamics because then you're using the assets within the pools rather than like if you were interacting with outside, you'd actually have to have the asset there because you can't do a virtual. This is it's kind of like I've seen something similar in the sense of using synthetics. It might be slightly different, but there was a platform a while ago. I can't remember the name of it, but that did sort of this with like virtual swaps of synthetics between multiple different chains. And it was a similar concept of like, it was like virtual pools where the asset would create synthetics. I don't know if it's similar, but it was kind of, I think, something down the similar ballpark where there was like a synthetic swap going on that enabled for cross-chain trading.
Probably. I never heard of it personally, but But even it's not synthetics. It's just the virtual pool is just a database which holds the calculation of these assets, just numbers that calculates how much you should receive of one asset if you swap another, right? And that's how it works. It sends messages. It's all communication.
Makes sense.
So it's simple when you think of it, but it's also like complex to build, of course. But it's simple when you think of it.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I think I've gone into the technical questions. Di, do you want to keep things going?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for breaking that down, George. I know it's super complex, and I want to touch on something as well. I mean, if you look at the market, like there's no denying that ecosystem like Solana are gaining like zero traction. I think they are attracting like more user, more depth, and token and TVL. And if the trend continue, I think we could see Solana holding about like 45%, like part number of the market, and EVM compatible chain like another 45%, and then order like Sui, Aptos, or Cosmos like taking the remaining 10% also. So that said, I think chain abstraction is a thing, and it's spreading user across 100 of chain at the moment. And for any one ecosystem or platform to disrupt this momentum, I think they would need to onboard like millions of users directly and bring in the next wave of like top dev also. So I think with that in mind, I have just my question. Would love to hear more about Euclid progress so far. Like I think Euclid could be one of those apps that could could be really like disruptive, and just love to hear more about Euclid's progress so far and how early are you in this journey, and can you share any traction or any milestone in its partnership or user feedback?
Yeah. So Thanks for that. So basically, we've been building for a bit less than a year now since the start. And our goal, as you said, is to be disruptive, to try something which has never been tried before, and not try to enhance what already exists, but just try something new which can offer, which can remove the trade-off which already exists because we're just saying, oh, we need a faster horse, right? We just need something new sometimes. So this is what we're doing. And what we did, we had private beta, which is like limited to 20,000 users, which tested the platform. It was not this UI, so this is the new UI, but just tested the platform and the infrastructure. We had over 300 builders in our hackathon building on top of Euclid. There was a lot of interesting applications. Some of them also got grants to continue building from like other like layer ones, basically. So just stress testing our infrastructure and platform, because our goal is not only to provide a platform, but provide the infrastructure for applications, like Eclipse, like any application platform you can think of to become omni-chain and access liquidity anywhere. So we work with lending protocols, to increase their margin limits by allowing liquidation on other chains other than when they're built on, for example. And yeah, so we did beta testnet, and now we're releasing our public testnet, which is going on with across EVM and Cosmos, and hopefully Solana, in less than 2 weeks now. It will be public, and anybody can come in, try it, the platform, and also the infrastructure you can start building on top of it. And then we're auditing our contracts, finalizing everything that we need before we launch on mainnet, end of Q1, very early Q2, so something of that sort. There's a range you need to put in just for everything to be ready. And yeah, so this is our where we are. We're just heads down building, ensuring we can do this. And then, of course, we want to just unify liquidity that exists on centralized exchanges as well, like Gate, like Binance, like any centralized exchange you can think of, and add it, which is, I think, the last part in unifying liquidity. This way, there's no more liquidity that you can't access, right? And so this is where we are, and hopefully we're able to do that. So yeah.
I'm curious with the sexes, do you run into any issues with like KYC or anything along those lines? If you're like interacting with sexes, or someone can tap into like sex liquidity from a distance, if you like, from somewhere else, do you run into any issues on that side of things?
Yeah, so there's some regulatory challenges you need to walk through. So I would say that. Now we're working on this. You need to work with the SACs and there's like a entity to do. It's a process. It's not as easy as you think, but you can do that, right? So yeah, there is some regulatory challenges there, but it's nothing you can't work on, right? But at the end of the day, because you need an entity that performs this transaction and then stuff like that. But we're working on it. That's what I can say for now.
Sure. I'm curious, what is your main distribution strategy? So how, like obviously like in crypto in general, there's two main parts of building a project and getting a project off the ground. You have the product, right? And then you have distribution. And so distribution can be like BD efforts and integrations and test nets and things like that, but it can also be key strategies for how they actually get velocity or traction or become like key players in the industry, which is a key part of all of this, right? It could be working with a wallet to integrate directly into the wallet. It can be, if you look at like Athena, how Athena's done it, there was like a community side with shards of points, which was a community front, getting people to deposit in Wales. But there was the integration front. They had aggressive BD to integrate as many their yield-bearing stables into many venues as possible. So what are your main pathways towards like distribution and getting that velocity and traction needed? Yeah, and Dai, you can also probably stop the screen share as well.
Yeah, good question. So basically, there's go-to-market is one of the hardest things to do in crypto. There's a lot of things happening in crypto at the same time. You need to show that you're something new, something good, something that needs to happen. And also with unified liquidity, because it's a new concept, it's even harder because you not only need to show your product, but you need to show them that what your product is built on is actually something that is useful, right? So we're preaching unified liquidity at the same time, and there are different people you need to preach to. You have the users. You need to show the users that this is something better, it's something that you need. You need to show applications, right? That this infrastructure, if you integrate it, you're going to access liquidity that you could do it in any other way right now. And finally, there is the liquidity providers. So you need to show liquidity providers that if you provide stable coins on Euclid, these stable coins can be accessed from anywhere, right? While if you provide it on one chain, these stable coins can only be accessed there. And you're just wasting so much ROI and facing so much impermanent loss if you keep it on one chain than if you just do it on multiple chains at the same time when you find liquidity. So we're working on these three at the same time. So there's a lot of efforts being put in. But our goal is, and they all work at the same time. So the more users you get, the more integrations you get, the more liquidity you get. It's just a flywheel. So we've been working on this a lot. We have a lot of supporters that have supported us on liquidity provision. Like we have like $30 million of committed liquidity to the layer, which is great for us, which helps us accelerate our go-to-market a lot. Integrations, we already have a lot of partners who are willing to integrate, who already even started integrating Euclid into their platforms and their ones, and helped us and connected us to their ecosystem for us to work with them as well to get unified liquidity there. And also users, which is on through our public testnet, users coming in to see our public testnet, testing it out, seeing how it works, seeing if they like it, how smooth it is, how fast it is. And then this is where you get the users part. And you give them, of course, you do incentivized testnets, you do some sort of community, and this is where you get the users part. And all of them work together to create this flywheel to accelerate go-to-market. But our end goal is integrate with as many platforms as possible and get unified liquidity, adopted across all ecosystems, right? And I think we're doing a good job at that. Like we're talking to a lot of partners, and I think a lot of people are interested in that because there's no other alternative solution which they can integrate natively right now. Right? There's aggregators, there's intents which you can do on the front end, but you cannot actually integrate into your application natively.
So you mentioned that there's obviously these three categories that you're touching around the same time. Do you see any of those that are like stronger than the others in terms of putting that move the needle? And is there any like low-hanging fruit that you see potentially accelerating this from a distribution method? As I mentioned before, like integrating a swap into a wallet, for example, is something that like reach the whole audience that you don't have. So what do you see as the key catalyst to obviously getting the most velocity and the lowest hanging fruit action or distribution strategy you can take that creates that, growth?
Again,
If it is
a question. Like this is a question everybody who is building something thinks of, right? Because they want to accelerate. And I think everybody should focus on accelerating as much as possible the access to the market, right? And for me personally, I believe for Euclid, it is getting as much liquidity as possible, getting commitments in, getting actual liquidity when we're live on mainnet as soon as possible. Because when you have TVL, when you have liquidity, users will flow in. Applications would want to integrate with you more. It just makes more sense. So the number one step would be getting this liquidity. And this is something we're working on a lot. This is for me, right? Then at the same time, or right after, you go through applications. Because you alone, my platform alone, can go so long to get users. Like how many users can I get? 2 million, right? While you can integrate 30 applications, big applications with users, and you would get access to all the user base, indirectly. And at the end of the unified liquidity is infrastructure more than it is a platform. A platform uses the infrastructure, but we're building stable infrastructure that can be used easily across any chain from any platform. So this is my end goal, right? So liquidity, then working on integrations as much as possible is the best, I think, accelerator for go-to-market, in my opinion, at least.
Nice. Just want to jump off Simon question. I think like if the product hits and then you build a strong community and then every member start acting like a BD and every user basically a low key non-MCO, non-CMO, sorry. And it's really awesome. So how do you think like your team can turn user into like those natural advocates, Georges? Just a quick question,
So most of your advocates when you're live, honestly, are people who hold your token, right? People who hold your token want you to win just indirectly, because if they hold your token, this is because they believe in you, they believe the product, that can be something big, right? If they hold your token either through investing in it or through other methods, which some people don't want to invest or can't afford to invest for some reason, There's other methods where you can, participate in incentivized testnets, participate in airdrops. There's multiple ways to, right? So the goal is to offer as much as possible avenues to get, and this is why tokens were created in the first place, to avoid, getting all this equity or access to a product into the hands of small percentage of people and getting it over to a community where more people could get involved in the product indirectly or directly, right? While also being supporters of you. So this is why tokens were created in the first place. So our goal is at the end of the day is when you build a good product, people would want to be part of it, right? And think this is going to be something big. Then you can also need to get your token in the hands of as much people as possible, not only through selling it to them, but also through, incentivized testnets, airdrops, ambassador programs, whatever you can do to get people engaged in your platform, giving them a reward for it, that if the platform succeeds, you're going to succeed as well. This is how you get the biggest supporters. And if you see all supporters of any project, they have their token somehow, right? And this is how it works. People want to be involved in something that can benefit them, and they want to be involved in something that they believe in at the same time, right? And they wouldn't hold your token for any period of time if they don't believe in you. If they don't believe in you, even if they get the token for free, they would sell it directly, right? You just sell it on the market. So if somebody holds your token, it means they believe in you, and that you need to first prove it to them, and also, make like you should. I don't know how to say it. Just build a good product for them to be happy. Like this is why tokens exist in the first place, or else we would just stay in how it was already the original method of just raising from VC's equity.
Cool.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that's exciting to hear. Speaking of the user, I think let's bring in some question from the user.
There's a couple of these. There's a couple of these, by the way, that seem like we've already kind of answered them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like the first one. But this one here, which is like, how much will unified liquidity affect the price of gas fees? Will they get cheaper the more chains added? I guess it's just depends on the chains.
Yeah, I think I already said that a bit. Which is that messages are very cheap. Messages are very cheap to send, right? So when you pay gas fees, of course, you pay gas fees of the chain. This we can change, and just pay a small additional fee because it's more expensive to send a message than just sending a normal message, the original message. But it's nothing you have to worry about unless you're using like Ethereum on peak days where it's $50 or something. Other than that, it's like cents, and it's nothing to worry about. You won't even feel it personally. So it's nothing. Again, nothing to worry about.
Cool. Awesome.
This is a cool tool, by the way. Streamsweave is sick. It's like displaying it displays the comment directly from Twitter at the bottom of the screen. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
This question I think we already answered, by the way.
Yeah, we already answered this. How it basically how it helps consolidate firm liquidity, and risks. It's way less riskier than bridging. That's what I can say. If you look at bridging in the past 5 years, $5 billion in exploits, which is crazy. Like $5 million vanished out of thin air, and maybe it's in the hands of North Korea or something. So yeah, so it's way safer. That's what I would say.
That's why I like IBC in general as well. But
yeah, that's why I love IBC. Like we're built on top of IBC at the end of the day. IBC, like maybe not the perfect design, but one of the best compared to any other bridge you can think of right now. Any other bridge is centralized by nature. Any other
and
bridge.
V2 coming soon, right? Which will connect Solana, Ethereum, L2s and stuff.
I'm excited. Scape is a great team. Like what they build is honestly amazing, and if they like V2, I think will be amazing as well. And if it works, like Cosmos will win a lot, and not only Cosmos, like even cross communication between L2s, like this doesn't exist yet in a scalable way. So
yeah, I was talking to them pretty deeply about like they plan to use the hub as a router. So the idea is like things will go through the hub, and IBC will then connect to Ethereum and Solana and like EVM and SUI, and just have like proper interoperability where you're not dealing with the some of the issues of a same issues of these centralized bridge risks that that currently exist, but IBC will actually exist in a greater capacity, which will make Cosmos a lot more relevant in general.
Yeah, hopefully. I'm excited to see that, honestly.
Oh yeah, I think we can look in Euclid files. Maybe one for Simon.
There's one question here from Sklent as well.
I see the next one. So make use of existing liquidity pool on each chain or from the Euclid pool on each chain.
Both, actually. So there's two layers to it. So one is the Euclid pools, which are the unified pools. But through the unified pools, you can also access, as you have seen in maybe you did see the screenshot, but you can just look at it later, where you can access liquidity pools like Radium, like Uniswap, like Osmosis, like Astroport, directly from Euclid as well. So it's two layers, but instead of bridging, you use the unified pools to do it. So there's the aggregation layer and the unification layer. So the answer is both.
Perfect. I think, how about this one? I think we already covered this one, right?
Yeah, slippage, same as any Uniswap, AMM you can think of. Slippage is the same thing. It's calculated by the number of assets in the pool. Slippage will be lower on unified pools because you unify liquidity across multiple pools. So you have more liquidity, which means less slippage. But calculation-wise, it's the same. But the more liquidity you have, the less slippage you have.
Well, difference there, like slippage versus price impact, right? Different. Like price impact is and this is, I think a lot of people get this wrong a lot of the time. It's like slippage. They talk about like slippage and price impact, like they're linked. You can kind of wrap them in, but price impact is the amount of the amount that you're trading in moves the price of the asset in the pool. So this
slippage like front running, basically.
Yeah, slippage, basically, we were talking about before. Slippage is actually the front running of trades, right? Which is that buffer that you allow for before that trade cancels itself. And I think a lot of people use these like interchangeably, but they're actually quite different.
Yeah. No, I agree. I use them interchangeably personally. Like slippage for me is either execution slippage or But yeah, so if slippage you mean like the slippage from the price, like if the price deviates from the price you already saw it when you execute the transaction, or front running slippage. Basically, because in unified pools there's only one price, right? Okay, sorry. So there's only one price. That's answering the other question. There's only one price. Then slippage will exist, like you usually do, but you need to set the limits yourself. So we talked about that. And front running won't be. It would be the same as front running on Uniswap. But you can always use. There's multiple ways to avoid front running, which you are working on, which is a front end or node perspective, where you hide transactions, stuff like that. But it's very similar to any other deck. So it's nothing more, nothing less.
Cool. Next one from Sarah. Maybe you could elaborate that. Would you see latency issue with the unified pool as a strong challenge with Rod chains?
Okay, so latency, I don't think so. It's also the same question as another one talking about standards. So cross-chain communication is not an issue. First, when you build on top of IBC and ZK IBC and IBC v2, IBC is one standard, and you can extend it over to EVM and Solana. So this is not an issue. So you have the same standard. And latency, as I said, it's pretty fast to send messages. It's actually a maximum of 2-3 blocks max. So if you're using the slowest chain, it may take like 30 seconds. Fastest chain, it can take like nothing. Sending messages is cheap and is fast. So you won't feel the difference than even doing a normal transaction sometimes. But yeah, so nothing to worry about, mostly because this is the only latency that exists. And this is what we have seen in testing, and you can see it yourself in public testing.
And I remember talking to 1105, you use your own relayer network, right? I remember you set up a system for relayers that mean you don't rely on public relayers and issues with that.
Anybody can run a public relayer, but we run our own set of relayers, which is optimized to the max for our transactions to ensure that we don't first accept any public message. And second of all, we, maximum throughputs. We have a set of 5 relayers working in parallel so that there's never, congestion in one. This ensures also latency. So yeah, thanks for reminding me, by the way.
What about like when like a chain goes down? Oh, so are you picking that up from the front end? So let's say Solana crashes or Neutron's down or Osmosis is congested and you have some issues on that front. Like, how do you handle that when that comes up?
Yeah, so as you know, when you do transaction on IBC, there's a packet and acknowledgement. So if a chain is down, you don't get the acknowledgement, so the transaction doesn't actually go through, and then it times out. So this is what happens. So if a packet times out, then the whole transaction is basically refunded and nothing happens. So acknowledgement, always make sure, even on Solana or whatever, there's always an acknowledgement coming back from a packet which says that, okay, the transaction has been processed. So this is how we handle that.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, cool. I think we can loop in Liquidity a little bit. Maybe one for Simon. Like, how do you see?
Yeah, maybe just a couple more questions and then we'll wrap it up. I think we're coming up to an hour now.
Yeah, I was fast. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I don't think we have any question left. So yeah, I think we can. Take a close look. I see. Cool. Yeah, I don't think we have anything.
Okay.
Cool. Right.
So maybe you, George, maybe to wrap it up, like is anything that you want to say to the audience? Any things coming up that they should keep an eye on? Any way that they can participate, support? Yeah, anything that you kind of want to leave the audience with before we wrap up?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for listening. Of course. Second of all, public testnet is coming soon. Be ready. Prepare your wallets. We want you to start testing. There's incentivized testnet. So trading gets you some points. It's going to be a point system. Finding bugs helps us a lot, and will help you get some points as well. So there's a lot of missions for you to do. So get ready for that. There's also some surprises there. And yeah, and since you love Eclipsify so much, start pushing Simon to start going cross-chain faster. I will help that to make a reality. So that's nothing I want to say.
Yeah, things coming. Just dealing with things days as they come.
Yeah, I'm joking. So we're already in talks with that, and it's all just in the pipeline, I would say.
Love it. Dai, how you want to handle the giveaway? Do you want to do that after the call and announce it, or what's...
Yeah, I think we'll be announcing them soon after the AMA. And if you guys sharing a recap, it will be a chance for you to win another $100 as well. Cool. So I think that thanks again for being a part of this session, George, and for you guys, for the audience. Please be sure to follow Liquidity and Euclid protocol for updates. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Take care, guys.
Thank you, guys.
See you soon, George.
Bye-bye.
Again.
Take care.